the cloud. Apparently, the first time I clicked record, it didn't start. So I think we are good now. All right. Anybody else from audience and citizens? All right. Hearing none.
Oh.
Look for a motion to.
Tony,
Yep.
Jerry Roberts wants to say something.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Real quick,
Yeah.
which department in town addresses issues of people putting signs up on town property?
Like tag sale signs. What are we looking at here?
Let's say there's a piece of public property in the neighborhood and someone just chooses to put a sign up on it, like no dog pooping or slow for children or whatever. Are people just allowed to put signs wherever they like on public property, or is there a department that addresses that?
If it's on public property or town property.
Town property, yeah.
I mean, I would contact the selectman about that, or
Right.
the police department. It's
Okay,
it's not us.
thank you
Yeah,
so
that-
much.
No,
That should run
absolutely.
through the selectman's office.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right, hearing none. Looking for a motion to start the public hearing.
Make a motion to start the public hearing.
Thank you. That was Chris. Move for a second.
I'll second Stan.
Dan. Bruce. Yay, nay.
Yes.
Alrighty. No Jonathan. Alan.
Yes.
Marion.
Yes.
Christie.
Yes.
All right, so we're starting a public hearing at 7:11 p.m. The application is 20-53, the text amendment to the Village Industrial Zone, Section 4.10, in the schedule of use of this applicant, Allison Sloan, and I think she is here.
Hold on for just a second, please.
Yep.
Okay. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. We've had all sorts of connection issues. Can you see Allison?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Hi.
Go ahead. So, yeah, if you would just go over, what you're looking for real quick, and we'll have a discussion about that.
Okay, we are looking to restore and revitalize this beautiful building. We are going to be buying it privately and leasing it to the Pandemonium Rainforest Project. And we're going to be putting in the thrift store and then putting in a building for the animals, for the animal museum.
Okay. All right, so you're looking to add this these two uses to our schedule.
Yes.
All right. Are those the only two things that are going in there, or is there anything else? I'm just out of curiosity.
That's it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we're not renting out to anybody else or anything. No.
Okay. And then I know we got two letters. I can get my mouse to work here. In favor of your project. Of course, it won't. Forgive me. It's giving me bits over here. Rockaway. There we go. Looks like Denise and Kathleen Schultz wrote, a letter in favor.
Yep, Denny and Kathy.
Yep. And there was also an email that I'm not seeing at the moment.
From Ann Bishop.
Yep. Thank you. So does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Did anybody discuss this any further? Anybody?
I have a couple of questions.
Shoot.
I think first off, what's being requested is a change to the zoning regulations. And obviously this is going to affect the whole north end of Main Street with this change to the text. It seems that the primary use of this project being retail is in fact permitted in the village industrial district as a special permit already. And that the second function, the function associated with the animals, the animal museum, I don't presently see anything in our regulations that allows an animal use like that. I think the closest thing in our regulations would probably be a veterinarian type function, because we talked about live animals being housed and or rehabilitated. That function, the veterinarian function, is also allowed in the village industrial district as a special permit. So I'm curious why we're pursuing a change to the zoning regulations as opposed to pursuing a special permit for this project.
Because, oh, are you asking me, Alan?
Yes, I am.
Because when I asked John and Mark, they said that that's the way that I should be going.
If I might, Mr. Chairman.
Fire away.
So this is John Guskowski, zoning enforcement officer. When Allison described the nature of the business to me, we looked at the zoning table, section 4.10.28, which is retail businesses, and 0.29. Only one of those two is allowed in the village industrial zone, village industrial district, which is 4.10.29, which is retail business, comma, traditional in nature, but which require disproportional display area, such as furniture and major appliance stores. And it, based on what Allison had described, the pandemonium retail element did not fit that description. It was a more traditional retail. It's a consignment shop and which would fit under traditional business, or a traditional retail business, which is 4.10.28, which is not allowed currently in the village industrial district. It wasn't clear to me why only furniture and major appliance stores would be appropriate and not other retail. So at that time suggested that in order for this particular type of retail, as described by Ms. Sloan, would require a text amendment.
If I could, I guess when I looked at this and tried to interpret the difference between the retail functions, and the thing that jumped out at me was, furniture and appliances. That's a type of retail that requires perhaps a loading dock and has, larger bulk deliveries and or purchases, and I can understand that as fitting within the context and use patterns of an industrial complex. It's my understanding that the thrift shop does a lot of, larger items, be it furniture, et cetera. And that is just by observation of driving by.
Right.
Which is kind of a different retail function and probably requires, a larger display or format for the building. So I guess want to disclose where I'm going with this is that I had a little discomfort in changing our regulations, especially because the village industrial district was created with explicit intent of preserving the industrial functions, especially in proximity to the main street and the commercial and the retail and residential neighborhoods, because it's vital to Deep River's history as well as it is to its economy, because we have some very viable and functional factories and industrial type functions. So I'd be hesitant to change the regulations because it's going to change the complex of another area, not just this project site, but of another area. And since this area of the project is more discrete, it's not a continuous district. I think that there's really two approaches to this project. One would be to say, does this site really belong in this district because it's discontinuous, or should it be defined slightly different for one site? Or should the project be considered in the context of a special permit, because I think it is closely aligned to the uses that are allowed by a special permit on that site. It is open to some interpretation. And again, I think that's why we have the public hearings to have a better understanding of that function and the compatibility with the other uses in the district and then neighboring context. The change to the regulations means that we really want to notify everybody in that purple zone and everybody that's abutting the purple zones because it's going to affect their properties. It seems like it's a project where we should be considering here and not necessarily the regulations.
So I guess this is back at Allison then. Does that actually, I mean, does that more fit what you're looking for? Do you have furniture? Is that?
Yes,
So that's
Yeah,
more
we
along the lines
do.
of what you're doing.
absolutely.
Okay. So I guess, I mean, that is a use in there, so. And Alan, you said there was the other use that fit?
The other use, and again, if we look at, I understand you call it a animal museum. And obviously this is a very unique use, and so we need to, interpret how it really fits in the regulations. Since it's, displaying animals and potentially exotic animals, I would define it as a zoo. Obviously, that's not a typical use that we would have in our zoning.
Yeah,
But,
it's not a zoo.
pardon me?
It's definitely not a zoo.
Yeah,
It's an educational facility, if anything.
okay. But in terms of its use and function, I see it as, I mean, you're rehabilitating exotic animals.
Yeah.
Caring for them and housing them on a certain percentage. Obviously, we need to interpret this.
Right.
But the veterinarian function is permitted in the village industrial.
It's under 41027.
And to me, that's a similar type of function by interpretation. It's housing animals, caring for animals, etc., and just public interaction, etc. So to me, that's the closest function that we have in our zoning regulations that have the same characteristics, and it's already permitted by special permit. If I were to look at a definition of museum, typically that's, exhibit of artifacts or things, objects or places of historic or scientific importance. But when I look at it in terms of its use, there are different considerations when you have animals. And that's been thought through, obviously, in our regulations when it comes to a veterinarian type facility, because you have feed and you've got, waste from the animals and you've got, the care there. So I
Right.
think it's a more similar use pattern.
Mhm.
So I think you have a pretty clear path to approval for the project under the existing regulations. And I think that would be met with a lot of support, not just from the public, but probably from the commission. But I will disclose it in terms of a change to the regulations. At this point, I can't see justification for that. So I would encourage you to consider the other paths. One, approve it as a special permit. Two, barring that, if that was not an option, look at segregating this property and trying to get that assigned to a different or a new zone for a use that we don't currently accommodate in our regulations.
Right, does anybody else on the commission want to comment on this?
Yeah, Tony, I have a question.
Please.
I know down the road, one of the potential uses of property is to be a museum.
Mhm.
If she goes ahead without changing the wording in our regulations,
Mhm.
does she then have to come back and do another application if she wants to do a museum because that's not listed in that zone?
So let's, I gotta be honest, I haven't seen the place. So can you explain the museum aspect of this to us?
As far as the animal museum,
Yeah, please.
okay, it would be a 55-foot by 30-foot building in which we are putting special displays
Mhm.
with information about the animals. And then basically our whole premise is education. So we always strive to teach people about these animals and basically not to get them. And so that's why we say it's more of a museum than it would be a zoo, because we absolutely don't follow those lines of a
Right.
zoo. So it would be a place where people could come in and see the animals and learn about them.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might, then just direct the commission's attention, well, to the application and to the regs. That's section 4.10.56, which is the use is museum, comma, or parentheses, public, which is, is currently not allowed in village industrial. And so the proposal would be to add special permit for 4.10.56.
Okay. Yeah, that's the one I'm struggling with too, because if you go to the veterinary one, I go flip back now. And you actually go to section 7B. There's no outside, they're not allowed outside. There's
Oh.
actually restrictions to it. So
Yeah.
versus the museum. So I think it's a half and my feeling is it's half and half. I think the retail part fits, what Alan was talking about, but I think maybe the museum is more along the lines of what you're after for the animals.
Excuse me, Tony, are we in the public comment yet?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
So just quickly, the veterinary hospital, an accessory veterinary hospital, any accessory building or use are located within 50 feet of any lot line or street. The lot, that's one of them. The lot on which such activity occurs has at least 50 feet of frontage. No outside storage of materials, supplies, or animals will be allowed. No lodging or boarding of animals shall be allowed except for normal recovery periods following surgical procedures.
Right.
So that's I'm not sure about that one.
I mean, that kind of is our lines.
Yeah.
We're not going to be boarding. We do have a professional herpetologist and a veterinarian who will be there for the animals.
Okay. So after the recover, what happens? That's
After-
have to go somewhere else, or
After the recovery, they may be adopted out, but we're not increasing our facility. We're not taking in a lot more.
okay.
So basically, they come in, they get rehabilitated, and then they go out to a good home.
All right. I mean, well, maybe that is right then.
Can I have a question?
Go ahead, please, Marion.
Are the animals going to be kept there? Because I know you have some that is in the retail flower
Yes,
area. So are they going to be kept here?
yes, they would be in professionally built environments. Yes,
Okay, so it's technically not boarding, But on the other hand, they would be.
No, it's definitely not boarding because they belong to us. They are forever homed with us. They are animals that have been rescued from crack houses or euthanasia. And the animals that we have now are animals that cannot be placed. And that would be there for people to learn.
Well, personally, I can understand kind of the approach to do a museum versus a veterinarian, although again, it's just a very maybe fuzzy use to some extent. I also can understand why originally it was placed in the retail for a zone change, just because it's not quite, you know, when I associate with furniture stores or appliances, you might have them being built on site and then retail along with that, or like a box store where you really have a lot of appliances or whatever. So I understand kind of both sides of the argument, whether it can be in 41029 or why you would need to add it in 41028. The other question I had though is, and I think I can't remember now. Would both of these uses be special exception, or is one just a site plan approval?
I think they're both.
Both are special.
Yeah.
They're both special exceptions, okay. Or special permits.
Anybody else from the commission or?
Yeah, Tony, I got a question. This is Stan.
Yep.
So basically, it sounds to me like you're trying to do like a shelter for these birds, and not so much as anything veterinary related, but it's going to be more of a shelter, and you want to be educational in the whole aspect, calling it a museum. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that we do a lot of veterinarian things with them, but yes.
Yeah, but it would just be just like a dog shelter or cat shelter just for birds.
Right,
If you're saying you're going to adopt them out. And
right.
so is there anything that falls into that category? Can anybody think of?
That I've seen.
Yeah, I think we're in a position here of having a very unique use that's hard to put into a standard definition that we're going to find listed. And so it's got to be a matter of interpretation. What is the closest use pattern? And again, I think if the primary function has to do with the care and or sheltering of animals, it's not a farm use. So again, based on our regulations, the closest one I could find to fit was the veterinarian, and I could interpret as being that function, which is a much slower version. You know, you bring in the animals, you rehabilitate them, and there's a longer recovery. And there's the important thing here is the public interface. Obviously, a veterinarian facility has a public interface, and there is, the ability to do training and some educational function. I think maybe what we need to do if there's a text change is to nuance animal facilities as opposed to a veterinarian facility. Is how do we look at a animal facility and what district does that fit? Whether it is the short-term veterinarian facilities or longer-term rehabilitation or sheltering of animals. Maybe we need to expand our definition of an animal facility as opposed to nuance it differently. Again, and I think if we were to say that this is in fact a museum, I think it's hard to fit that definition. Again, there's usually it's artifacts and objects and places of importance.
Right.
If the museum was about the building, I get it, because it has to do with the history of industry in Deep River, and it's could be per se a building museum. That's not the function that you're pursuing. If that was
No.
the intent was a building museum, I get it. And that's when I would recommend that you say, well, let's pull it out of the Village Industrial District and try to redraw the lines as opposed to redefine what's allowed in the overall district. Is because you're talking about a special circumstance with the building. But I think in this case, we're talking about a special circumstance with the use, and how can we interpret that? And it's my feeling that it does fit what's permitted in that district if there's some latitude in the interpretation. And I think you're going to meet some approval in that regard.
We definitely do a lot more of a veterinarian kind of environment with the animals that come in and then go out. I know a lot of veterinarians that have a few animals there that they house in their vet offices.
Agreed.
But we definitely take them in, vet them, rehabilitate them, and then try to find them homes on the most part.
And some do stay for the long term. I kind of feel where Alan's saying it is a hospital. You said you had a vet on site.
Right.
But maybe I think it would fit under that, but I think again, we're going to have to tweak our definition of that.
I think most vet facilities you go to are going to have resident animals as well.
Right. That's
So
what I was
it's
saying.
not an unusual use pattern. It's not an unusual model. It's a little bit skewed to longer term, but as a function, I would define it as being fairly similar.
Yeah.
All right. Is anybody else from the commission? If not, I'm going to let the public speak on this.
Just real quick, I mean, I agree with what Alan is saying on the adjusting the entire district versus if there's a way we can do it by a special permit. I'm in favor of that versus changing everything.
All right. Anybody else? If not, anybody from the public?
John Kennedy.
Hey, John.
Hi. Hi, Allison. It's nice to see you also.
Hi.
Backing up a little bit. First of all, I'm speaking very much in favor of what Allison is looking to do in this particular location as well. I know what she's doing. I've seen what she is doing down on South Main Street, which I think is, a kind of close model. But in fact, we're not looking at her particular project. We're looking at a use and a zoning change. And so as an example, that's how we're using her particular project. I would suggest that just from the conversation I've heard, the use is best to be as a special use. That would, I believe, then give you all the controls that you need that go along with some of the particulars that some of the members have mentioned about certain locations. So I would suggest that perhaps Allison's use would be appropriate, and I believe it is, in the location that she's talking about, but maybe not in other locations. The way to handle that in any sort of mixed use scenario, which we're talking about, the downtown's mixed use, have it as a special use, then you can allow it or deny it depending on whether it meets, quote unquote, the plan of development and the zoning goals. So I would say that retail and museum is not going to be, it may be a use that you do want to add as a special use. I'm not saying it isn't, and I think it would be a good addition to the special, as a special use in the village industrial zone. The particular location, walking downtown, the mixed use that is the traditional small town that every plan of conservation development has said is what they want in terms of the public comments that have been made. And that is the historic small town, mixed use, has everything there. This is a walkable kind of a location. I think this all fits the plan of conservation development very nicely, both Allison's specific use, as well as the idea of adding retail and museum as a special use in the village industrial zone. I would also say that going back and looking at this as a use change, you may definitely benefit from having this as a special use, given that there is some desire to have a small, clean industrial activity in that zone. And if that is the kind of primary best use, and I think it's been found to be that, or it wouldn't have been zoned that way. I'm not saying that's correct, but if it is, then perhaps you want to make sure that you're always testing the special uses against your overall goals for that particular area of the town. So I think it needs to be a special use. And I think I would suggest that any additional use should be a special use. Then you can keep focused on industrial. And you can consider then the special natures of those particular additional uses in the particular areas they are, given that it is in the middle of the town and there are so many other factors involved that differ from one end of the street to the other. Some are more residential, some are near a school, not in this particular case, but you do need to look at it on an individual basis very closely. And then, as somebody mentioned, you really do want to have the neighborhood involved. And one way of doing that is to have a special use. You must have a hearing in those cases, and it makes it a little bit more, a bigger input and a community input. So I think that those things are important. I also think that if you are looking at Allison's particular use, I would say that, as many people have spoken about, I don't think it fits easily into either retail or museum. Certainly, it creates a lot of problems if you're looking at it when they do make an application. How does it fit in there? So if you do believe that that kind of use should also be, or should in otherwise be added as a special use, I think that if you call it a shelter and you define a shelter, then more specifically in the regulations, to be a place where not only are small animals kept for some period of time, but that they're also, the public is invited to come in and see them and learn about them. So I think a shelter definition is needed, but I think you do need another use to accommodate what Allison is looking to do, rather than retail and museum. But I'm all in favor of adding all those uses as special uses. So I just want to be on record as that, and I'll be there for Allison's particular project too. Thank you.
Thanks, John. All right, anybody else from the public?
Yes, I'd like to say something.
Yeah.
So I'm Jerry Roberts. I was the executive director of the Connecticut River Museum, the New England Air Museum, the National Lighthouse Museum, and the Intrepid Sea Air Space Museum. So I spent 35 years in the museum business. I 100% support what Allison is doing. I'm very familiar. I've been there a lot. I think helping the animals is incredible. I'm also very supportive of preserving this historic building, which we all know it someday might have been torn down for some other use. So to keep this part of our community's heritage alive through this center is a great idea. I would only suggest, Allison, that the name museum is going to really confuse people. It's going to confuse the museum community because museums display objects, and I don't think you want to call animals, living animals, objects as part of a collection. So although there are some museums that do have segments where they have some live animals as part of their science education center, you might look at calling yourself something slightly different than a museum, or maybe you include something in the building that also chronicles the history of the building. But I think an animal museum is going to confuse a lot of people. Having
Right.
said all that, I'm 100% supportive of what you're doing, both for the animals and preserving the historic structure. And if I can help you, I will.
Thank you.
I saw Frederick's iPad. They raised their hand. If you want to pop on and. No? All right. Anybody else?
I'd like to say something quickly, if that's okay.
Name, please. I'm sorry.
My name is David Bridges, and I'm a friend of Allison's sitting here, so I'm sort of a biased and impartial, but I just wanted to reaffirm some of the things I'm hearing here, that I do believe that the use of museum on the application was probably a misnomer. I think you all have more accurately defined it as an animal centaur or a sanctuary, or perhaps but I think in some ways, I think you understand the spirit of this particular part of this project, and that is not necessarily to deal with animals as either museum objects or as pieces of commerce where we would take them and fix them and send them back out, as you see with the veterinary, but it's a sort of a hybrid. I think you guys see this. I do think that the label museum on the application is perhaps misleading, because I do think that you're seeing this much more as the sanctuary idea. And I just wanted to thank you for digging deep into this, because I know this matters a lot. And in regards to this idea of the building itself, and again, this is a little off topic with zoning, but the intent of the building is to restore it and to have informational displays regarding the Pratt Reed and the ivory trade there. And so as part of the thrift shop, there is a plan to install, to retain as much as possible the original mill fixtures inside, and to install informational plaques on the property and throughout the building itself. So that is a bit of a sort of secondary mandate for us with the retail shop to try to honor. It's a building that was built in 1856 and has been part of Deep River for 160 years.
I think I got this figured out. I was screwing up on my iPad.
Okay, go ahead.
So you can hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. We have a unique opportunity to, number one, save a unique piece of Deep River's heritage, the ivory industry. And we probably came very close to actually losing it, which would have been a travesty for our town. Now, our retail segment in the town of Deep River has to compete with two very dynamic towns on either side of us. And I don't want to use the word, and I won't use the word, but we've been described in a really poor manner in years past. And we need to support our local businesses and have reasons for people to come to Deep River and preserve our heritage at the same time. This is a unique opportunity to do both of those things. And I don't think anybody would be very pleased about having a sleek steel light industrial building put on that piece of property and lose the existing ivory factory that still exists in our town. It would be a travesty to allow it to go away. And it very well could have and still may disappear if we don't do something about it. The stores in our town will benefit from having people come to see this facility. And if we, what are the alternatives? It's a very good adjunct to that neighborhood. I don't think any of the neighbors would really like a factory in their town. The Seaco's a pretty quiet little industry. It doesn't have to be if it was replaced with another industry, quote unquote. And I don't know any museum that doesn't have a museum store, by the way.
Tony, if I could just
And
respond. to
and
that.
that museum store, if you want to call it that, the Pandemonium Thrift Shop, all of those proceeds go to supporting those animals, which is not a cheap endeavor. I personally worked with some of the birds in Pandemonium Rainforest, and they're all unique little personalities, and many of them are very delicate. There are some that will never be rehomed, and I 100% support the idea of educating people to not purchase these birds or other animals and try and make them pets. And I think that that's a very high and good use of the property. And as they've indicated, they want this building preserved for the town. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Frederick, if I could just respond real quick to your point about preserving a building. This is in the Village Industrial District, and the village districts within Deep River have some additional protections in that if you are going to alter that building, it requires that you go through the design advisory board. You actually have the design reviewed. So there are protections within Deep River because of the village districts that have been established to preserve the buildings and the characters in the context. So rest assured that if you look in our regulations, it does stipulate that process and some of those requirements for kind of the built environment in context. And that includes the residential village district and the commercial village district and the village industrial district. So there are some provisions for protection of that resource.
If I may interrupt, the town as of yet doesn't have a demolition delay, even a demolition delay provision in its zoning. And so if somebody had purchased this building and decided to want to tear it down, we didn't have any muscle to prevent that.
Wow. It's terrible.
Yeah.
In the process.
We're in the process.
It's in the process, but that building could already be gone by now.
All right.
Scary.
It's true.
We're getting a little off topic here. Does anybody else from the public?
Tony?
Yep.
Joel? Most of you know who I am. I'm not here as a selectman, although I am one. I'm here for this lady that's next to me and Allison. They're the two that have formed the corporation to buy it. I know there was a rumor at one point in town that the 501c3 would buy it and it would thus go off the tax rolls, which isn't good, in my position in the town, but that's not true. That these two ladies are buying it. I think the application that is before you was neither one of them are zoning experts in any way, shape, or form. They wanted to do it right. They wanted to get it through so that they can do what they do best before their lease runs out where they are in their south end of town. And I think it's become obvious that I think that the planning commission sees it as a special use versus a change, and I would agree with that. This is a special use thing, but they only went in that direction because of some of the recommendations and suggestions that were made. They're looking to you to say that it is special use only, or that's the way to do it because they want to do this. And Alice, I'm surprised she doesn't have it, but she has a bird at her house right now that's a big red-headed parrot that has basically no feathers on it. And that's because it was not taken care of for all those years. And will that bird ever get feathers back? And will that bird ever go out to another home? My guess is probably not. And that's what she lives her life to do, is to take care of those animals. And that's what's going to be done at this facility if you guys can issue the special issuances so that they can do it. And the sooner they can do that building, the sooner they can start, and their lease is up within a few months where they are. So that's not a reason to run something through because you shouldn't or whatever, but they are under a time crunch and they want to do it right. And they hope and they look to you as for any guidance that you can give them to get this done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to throw this out there real quick. It's not that, anybody was using the wrong use or anything. I think just that's the nature of this, as we said, we debate it and come up with what we think is correct. And
It's educational for us. Yeah,
so
for all of us.
I think we all get a consensus and, we're good to go. Again, anybody else from citizens?
Yeah, I will chime in. My name is George Gerard. I'm actually a neighbor of the West Factory, live at 106 West Elm. The West Factory, a few of the things I'll note on it is some of the people have talked about the historical value. The building itself and being preserved and the way that Allison's application is written means a lot to us because our house was actually constructed as part of the West Factory by George Reed back in 1831. So we actually have a bedroom window that through the woods in the wintertime we can see the factory, and we really respect the history with that. And then in addition to that, looking at the application and hearing what Alan has said and some of the other people's, I definitely think that it falls in line with the retail for 10.29 as being a disproportional display area, because I don't know the exact square footage of the area, but I do know that the 0.28 talks about it being less than 700 square feet or less than 3,000 square feet. And I believe that building would be much larger than that in floor space, which would push it into that 0.29 area. And then the museum versus veterinary, again, I'm not a zoning expert by any means, but what Alan laid out as being more of a veterinary type rehabilitation place. Some may get adopted out, some may be lifers staying there forever. And then maybe a rebuttal to that would be that they're, would be charging or having people come in to view the animals, and having classes. But I think a veterinary place would do the same thing to try to educate people on the animals that they have in there. So with all of that being said, and even looking at some of the other planning wording that's in the regulations about, future developments that don't have negative impacts on public health and degrade the surrounding public area and things like that. And this being mostly surrounded by the R30 district, I think this is a great use. We are definitely.
Somebody's got a TV going in the background.
I was trying to find that on here. I think I know who it is.
It might be Jonathan since this came on.
Somebody, hold on.
Tony?
Yep.
Jonathan here.
Hey, Jonathan. You got something?
Well, I am of the recollection that we do have a perhaps not very meaningful, but delay on the destruction of older buildings.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I thought you said we didn't have one.
Well, I mean, we kind of ran into that with the oil company there, right? I mean,
right.
Zoning has a delay. Unfortunately, we find out it's not very effective unless the ordinance now before the Board of Selectmen. So they're going to discuss that and move forward on that separately.
Yeah, we need to just firm it up. Okay, that's all I had.
Okay. Anybody else from the public? All right. So just be aware when we move forward, when we close the public hearing, if that's what happens, there's no more public input. I just throw that out there because something always comes up. But if everybody's good, anything else from the commission? If not, looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I need a motion first, Jonathan. So
I'll move the Jonathan second.
Who was the? You guys are going too fast. Hold on a second. Who put the motion forward and who seconded?
I second Jonathan.
All right. So Chris, do you put it out there?
I did.
Thank you. Chris DeRozier.
Yes.
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Marion? All right. All right, so that's public hearing portion of this is closed. Back to our regular scheduled regular meeting. We're going to move on to approval of minutes. Anybody actually read these yet, or
They were posted on the website today, and I put them in the share file this evening.
Yeah.
Read them.
Read them?
Yep.
All right, anybody else?
I did also, Marion.
You're way ahead of me. I didn't have a chance to read it. So I guess if you guys have read them, any mistakes you've seen, or we're looking for a motion to approve?
Tony, this is Al. I have read them, but I'm going to request again that we get the minutes within a couple of days of the meeting that took place. Because the intent of these meeting minutes is to be able to follow up and take action on decisions that were made at the meeting. And if we're receiving these the day of the following meeting, we've lost a month to address the issues that come out of the meeting. And the public then is also not able to be aware of what may be coming in a subsequent meeting. And so I think it's absolutely imperative that these get out within a couple of days of the actual meeting. And whatever it takes to do that, we need to take that action.
I agree. Anybody else? If not, looking for a motion to approve these.
I make the motion to approve.
Mary, anybody second?
I will second
Second.
that.
I'm sorry, who was seconding?
Chris.
Thank you. Bruce,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Aye.
Alan,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
and Christine.
Yep.
All right, moving on to new business.
Thanks, everybody. I'm leaving now.
Take it easy, John.
Great job you're doing, guys.
Thanks. New bit number 7, new business, application 20-53, text amendment to the village industrial zone, section 4.10, schedule of uses, applicant Allison Sloan.
I'm not sure. Yeah, but I don't know if that was for that.
Somebody gotta mute themselves here. All right, discussion, motion, anybody?
Tony, this is Alan. I would suggest that we table this discussion until we can have further, maybe the applicant have further discussion with the CEO and consider the approach. Again, I don't think that the discussion to date has focused on a change to our regulations as much as the discussion has been about a specific project. So if we're to come to a resolution on a text amendment, I'm not sure that we're in a position to move forward with that.
What I mean, the text amendment would be something separate, but I think at the moment, I think you hit it on the head with the, they should do the special exception for 4.10 point, what is it, 29? For the retail portion.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I might. Alan, if I'm understanding what you're suggesting, is that maybe a finding, maybe a rejection of the text change that would add general retail to the village industrial district, along with a finding and direction to the zoning officer that the commission believes that the applicant's use as described fits under the furniture and appliance store section. I think that would be sufficient to what you're proposing on that end, although I'm not sure what you want to do about the museum.
But I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the discussion was that it could fit under the veterinary use, and then maybe that use definition is going to need some changing to, because they have a vet on site. And go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're right, John. My suggestion is to reject the text amendment. But the recommendation is to, is that the preliminary findings that we think that fit in the existing uses allowed by special permit within the village district, and perhaps it just be reapproached as a special permit. So I'm not sure if there's a motion to consider a special permit, but if I am going to put forward a motion, it's going to be to reject the text amendment and not necessarily identify it being as museum or otherwise. I guess I'm not being entirely clear, but
No, I get what you're saying. You're saying reject this. Go ahead, Mary.
We don't have a museum definition in our regulations, and museums aren't allowed in the village industrial zone.
Correct.
And somehow this really, unless we add shelter to the veterinarian regulation, it really just doesn't, to me anyway, fit into a vet. And given the building, I kind of like the museum use, although it could be an education center, but that use also is not allowed in the village industrial zone. I don't know. I think we should actually add these as a special permit in the zones. Although obviously the retail for furniture is currently a special exception or a special permit. I don't know if you heard me. I can hear background music or background stuff.
Can someone
I heard
mute
you.
whoever has that background or TV on, please mute.
Thank you. I agree. I think the first use is pretty clearly covered. It's the second one that's pretty unique.
She also recommended a place for
Maybe you're
her
gonna add or
to live while they waited to sell.
I think the original comment that came out of this is that if we change the uses allowed in this zone, it's going to change the use of every village industrial district property in town. And that's what we were trying to avoid.
But if it's a special permit use, then I think it fits. I mean, we could still review each individual use regardless.
Right,
Which is, I think, what John Kennedy was saying.
Yeah.
It's a special permit so that we would look at that use wherever it is in the village industrial zone. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be just a site plan use or an administrative approval.
Mary, I kind of agree with that approach, but perhaps adding museum as a special use within the village industrial district, largely not because of the specific site, but of the balance of the village industrial district, which is at the north end of Main Street, and does have additional facilities which would be conducive to that. Not, I can identify several buildings that could fit that category, not because of the historical importance, but because of the nature of the buildings themselves and their ability to mesh with the commercial, to have gallery space, to have exhibit space, and of a scale that you're not going to find in the rest of the retail zone. At the same time, that's the type of change that really requires a little more planning, finesse, and study. Because again, when we created these other zones in the village districts in particular, it was a year-long study to look at those uses and the blend, et cetera. So I certainly would support that initiative, because the only place that museums, if I'm not mistaken, are zoned right now is on the other, it's in the pink district. If you look at the map that's up right now, the village mixed use. And that's where we have the Stone House is within that district, and it's, you know, kind of meshed into that Main Street commercial retail district. So maybe the village industrial district is a natural continuation of that. But I think we need to look at the nuanced implications of that. Special use is certainly the way to go if we're going to move in that direction.
I'm gonna have to just chime in for a second, because again, I keep going back to, and they've partially agreed to this, it's not really a museum. I'd like to see it there. I mean, they're live animals, it's not really a museum.
But there are artifacts there.
Yes.
But we need to approve the use. If a primary use is the rehabilitation and sheltering of exotic animals, you can't just slip that in as it's kind of happening. I would like to see that as being an approved use. And to me, the easiest path to that is a expansion of the veterinarian use, that it's an animal facility, be it veterinarian or sheltering, because it has the same use characteristics, same health implications, similar public interface characteristics, et cetera, that you would regulate that under. So, that one I think would be a more nuanced, a little nuanced definition of what that veterinarian facility is. If we begin to back up and say animal facilities, that would allow us to move forward quickly. We're not significantly altering the uses allowed in a district where we're adjusting them because we're more educated on the type of animal facilities that we need to accommodate.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I honestly think it's both. I think it's the museum and the veterinary with an expanded definition. I think it's three uses. I think it's the retail, I think it's the museum and the veterinary expanded use, to be honest with you. That's my thoughts. Anybody else?
Can I look at this from a different perspective just to kind of help? Because this is a complex thing,
Yeah.
right? We're trying to figure out a complex program and make it work in a zone that has limited uses allowed. Let's say what zone would this go in without issue? Because like you're saying, Tony, Alan, everybody, this is a very unique situation.
Right.
And I don't think it's as cookie cutter as saying, it'd be better off in this use. I don't know. Right now, what is the use? What is the zone it's in now? And it seems to be a viable location for them as we speak. I mean, I'm just trying to come at it from a different point of view of understanding, the complexity of the program and how we want to manage that from a planning and zoning standpoint without impacting the town's zoning regulations.
Presently, the only place that a museum is zoned is in the village mixed use. And that's in the light pink.
Yeah. So is there where do we have, where can we have a vet then? Is
Village Industrial District, the district that they're proposing it in by special permit.
That's the only other one that has the veterinary.
No, there can be others.
Yeah, there's a bunch of other ones for vets.
But in terms of having retail and veterinary, VID is the only one that has both by special permit.
No, every veterinary has a retail. They sell stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing with Alan in a way that if the VID zone already has the use of the vet type of facility with the retail program, we're splitting hairs with the museum term here as far as how it's ran. That's just my opinion. And then we don't really have to change any of our regs if we go that route. There's not a lot of risk involved between calling it retail versus museum. I mean, the reason we have uses and they're slated for certain zones is because the type of activities housed by the buildings within them. And I think Alan painted a really good picture on what exactly the vet use type is allocated for and why it makes sense in the VID and why it is in the VID. And I think this program, while it's not a perfect fit, obviously, I think for the sake of this conversation, it makes a lot of sense. And it doesn't really draw us to make any changes to the regs. And I understand, you know, the special permit process, Marion, I'm just, if we don't need to go down that road and open up, you know, that can of worms, I'd rather not.
You guys would be, so if they came back with the vet use, that would, you guys would have, I mean, you're thinking that would be approved? I'm not gonna hold you.
The way I read the retail description with the larger, you know, larger program requirements for larger pieces of, you know, either furniture or equipment on display in retail, partner that with, you know, their bird program and you know, the veterinary aspect nature of that. I mean, it's not, again, not perfect, but it's just as, for me, it's just as much, if not more, in the vet program as far as what it needs infrastructurally and what's allowed already in that district than the museum where we're all getting hung up on.
Okay.
That's just me.
Valid points. Anybody else?
Hey, Tony?
Yeah, Bruce.
Thinking, Allison, you can correct me on this. So the museum is going to be a separate building. We were saying 55 by 30. So this is going to be a new construction on that site?
Yes.
So kind of hard not to emphasize the fact that it is a museum.
Bruce.
And she's constructing a new building.
Go ahead. We're out of the public hearing, just so you.
No, go ahead.
No, there's the public hearing portion of this is closed, so I just.
And
there's
there's a difference between the text change and the development proposal.
Gotcha. Anyway, I'm sorry, Bruce. I didn't. If you had any more questions, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Want to see this work. If she's going to have what will very definitely be a museum, because she's going to have to come back and put up a brand new building on the site, it kind of emphasizes the fact that it is going to be for that purpose. Can we use sanctuary as opposed to museum?
I'd suggest we call it an animal facility, which
yeah,
is I would say a type of veterinarian or, you know, animal facility is a broader term. We may look to our regulations to say veterinarian facilities fit into the broader category of animal facilities. As a commission, we might look to change the language on that to anticipate those types of facilities. We're looking, we've been reviewing applications for, you know, for boarding and for animal grooming, et cetera. It's something that we should be addressing. And finding a clearer definition that these applicants can fit into. I tend to think that the museum component is a little bit of a red herring, because it's not the primary function is in the sanctuary for the animals, and I think we want to define that as such so that we can approve it as such. you know, if I were to interpret our regulations with this proposed special use, I would be inclined to approve it in this district because it's the one district that does allow these, you know, these two parallel uses. It's the closest that we have. It's right. I'm very much in favor of the project. And I think as a commission, we need to interpret our regulations and allow for things to change as we, you know, as we massage our regulations going forward. And we don't need to be absolutely explicit in identifying every potential use exactly. I think we need to understand what the intent is of these zones, and I think that this proposal is fitting the intent. If you read the intent of the Village Industrial District, it is. I think it's a very good fit without change to our regulations or without significant change to our regulations.
This is Christy. Sorry, I had to switch to audio, but I'm in favor of this project. I think it's an awesome idea. And when I get on Route 9 every day, I look over that building and I'm bummed that there's nothing there. So I think this would be great. But I also agree if we can do it with a special permit somewhere, some way, that's what I'm in favor of. And I think I don't think there's a tie between what's on the special permit, what we call it, animal shelter, animal this, vet, and then what it's marketed as. So I just hope we don't get too hung up on that. And, you know, that's just my thought on it. I don't know that has to be super perfect, as long as we get close.
Can't hear you.
Tony, are you speaking?
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Faint. Very faint.
Can you hear me now?
Barely. Something happened with your audio.
How about that?
Much better.
Yes.
The automatic volume adjusted it all the way to the bottom. Okay, anyway, let's continue. So if nobody has anything else, looking for a motion.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, fire away.
If the commission wants to proceed with this application under the special exception under veterinarian, I can go along with that. But I really think that then the commission should actually add some of those uses to the veterinarian use. I kind of slightly disagree. I know we can interpret our regulations, but I think those uses should be added to it.
I agree.
So that you're not constantly trying to fit things in. I guess I just don't think that's good zoning in the long run.
Yeah, I know, I agree. That's why I was pushing for adding that use. That I think that the definition needs to change in hospital.
But I don't think, you know, given Allison, like I said, I can understand how it was interpreted. And I don't think she should come back and try to change that. We can go forward understanding that. But again, we need to then go forward and maybe add some definitions that can be interpreted in a variety of ways, but clearer.
I agree.
I agree with you, Marianne. The reason I think we want to have some latitude in interpretation is that we don't delay the applicant, that we understand the intent. We have our own homework to do to refine our regulations. But I think that the existing uses that are permitted under a special permit are close enough that we can interpret, and then we can at the same time pursue the nuanced language that broaden the type of animal facilities that we clearly recognize.
All right. Still looking for that motion.
I got one more thing to say. This is Stan.
Yeah.
So I'm all in favor for it too. You know, they're going to preserve the building with the retail side. They're going to build a new building for the birds. Just because we're in Connecticut, it's going to have to be conditioned.
Mhm.
So, you know, they're not going to have to alter the old building that much. So I think it looks good. And I think it does fall into the special permit. But we do need to change the reg there on the top.
Okay.
I'm going to go back. Actually, I think we should, whether we consider this a museum use or not, I think we should add museum to our regulations in the village industrial.
I said that earlier, and I think so.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So are you making a motion to approve the museum but deny the lower retail use?
Sure, if it gets us where we want.
I think that's, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think that's,
Tony?
yeah.
I'm not in favor of any text amendment at this point because I don't think that this single meeting was enough to explore all the implications to the plan for Deep River. Like I said before, the establishment of these districts and what is permitted in them was a year-long study. I don't think that we are being responsible to make a text amendment without the input of all of the property owners and businesses within that district and the abutting districts. So I think that this would be a very rash decision in changing our regulations without understanding the implication on the entire town of Deep River. We're reviewing a project. We have not embarked on reviewing our regulations and the implication to the patterns of use in town. So I caution us in making a text amendment based on an hour-long discussion.
All right. Marion, I mean, she made the motion. Looking for a second, and Alan's against. I'm assuming at this point. Or are you making it an alternate motion?
I think I had put forward a motion to deny the text amendment. I don't know if there was a second on that, but I think that this is an alternate motion.
Marion, you were going to say something?
I don't, whatever you'd like to proceed, that's fine. So if you want to do Alan to deny, that's fine with me. I can withdraw the motion.
I mean, I'm fine with both, and we can vote on both. It's up to you guys.
Well, maybe we should start first off by deleting what is there, what the motion is. If we're not going to go with the motion that's there, then maybe Alan's should get a second to delete that business of amending the text.
Okay. Looking for a second.
So I would go ahead and second Alan's. I think that was on the floor first. I think that came up first.
Yes. So, Alan, so right now the motion on the floor, if I understand this correctly, is to delete the use that's been put forward. Yes?
Yes, the motion is to deny the text amendment as proposed by Allison Sloan.
Okay. And it's been seconded by Bruce. Chris?
Yeah, I'm in favor of that.
Bruce, you seconded. Alan, you've done it. Stan
Yes.
and Marion.
I'm not sure I'm seated. Am I still seated?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think, because I never seated Jonathan, so
Okay, okay.
Sorry.
Actually, I'm gonna say no.
you're gonna say no. And Christie.
Yes, but I thought we were, yeah, never mind. Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else to go along with this? Bruce, it sounded like you had a, go ahead, somebody else.
I have a question. We just said no to it, but are we okay with her? We're okay with her reapplying as a special permit, correct?
That's the consensus.
I
Okay.
think so. I think that it's going to require some latitude and interpretation by the commission.
So I know they're under a time crunch, and so, just being, compassionate to that, do we have to wait a full month then to redo that? Or do we have any other means to, reconvene for a 10-minute, 15-minute thing and a vote?
So if we had approved this, just hypothetically, if we had approved this tonight, they would have had to apply under this section anyway, and they would have been back next month with an application. So either way, they'd be back next month with an application. So I think they kind of planned for that. So if John's still here, I think they planned that out to accept the special exception, regardless of which way it went, and come to a public hearing. I think they planned that out. I think John disappeared.
Okay.
But I think they planned for all this. But again, I mean, if we need to do a special meeting or something, I don't think this is that controversial considering how many people showed up in favor. All right, anybody else on this subject?
So if it's a matter that she would have to come back, Tony, can we do a special meeting so we don't have to wait a whole month?
Yeah, I'm fine with that if everybody else is. If we get an application, we can do, I'm fine with a special meeting.
Like next week?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
If it's a special permit, you still have to advertise. It's a public hearing.
Yep. But he's saying just accept it.
I mean, yeah, could we allow the ZEO to accept it for us and to set the public hearing?
So we've done this previously. If we're given enough notice, the application comes into the office and we are able to advertise properly, we can notice the public hearing, accept the meeting or accept the application and have the public hearing all in one night.
That's right, we just did that.
Cool.
Thank you, John. So we can do all that if you guys are fine with that. I'm assuming yes. All right. Anything else?
I know there's no public right now, but should she reach out to you, Tony, and John to help expedite this? I know it's not public time, but in order to help her expedite.
Nope. Yep, absolutely. She can
Okay.
get the application in tomorrow morning if she wants.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more discussion on this application? All right, hearing none. On to site plan application 21-02, accessory apartment, 21 Brockway Ferry Road, applicant RMH Construction LLC. Let's see if I can get that up in front of you guys. There's the application. Is there an agent or anyone here to speak on behalf of this? All right. John, do you have any info for this? Seeing as there's no one here.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can bring it up. So the applicant is the construction company. The owner on Brockway Ferry is doing a number of renovations to the house, adding some decks. And what they want to do is convert the space above the garage, which is also being slightly expanded, to an accessory apartment. And in reviewing the application, I noted that an accessory apartment requires a site plan. And so they got their application for the site plan in advance of this meeting. It appears to me to be conforming with the regulations.
Right.
Um,
My only question is, do they have grant approval for the expanded use? And if they do not, everything else under here looks all right to me, but I would make that a condition of approval if that's what you guys do.
Yeah, let me see. I believe that we had CRAD approval in the file, and I guess I don't know if I put that up there or not. I can take a look.
Anybody else?
Does this need a public hearing? Is it a special permit?
It is a site plan, not a special permit. It does not
Oh,
require a public
okay.
hearing.
All right. For the record, I drove by the house. The addition seems to go along with other houses in the neighborhood. It's a big house, but all the other houses are big houses too. I don't have a problem with it.
Anybody else? If not, looking for a motion. I did hoping you guys throw in the condition if you're so inclined.
I would move to accept the application, approve the application with the condition of the CRAD approvals. Do I have that term correct, Tony?
Yep. For a second,
I'll second that.
Bruce, Chris,
Yes.
Stan,
Yes.
Marion,
Yes.
and Christie.
Yes.
All right. That motion passed. Looks like next on the agenda is informal discussion, 19-21 Prospect Street, John Finkeldy. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of this informal discussion? All right. John, do you have any info on this one?
I don't. I think it's possible that my colleague Mike put this one on the agenda. I am not familiar with what's being proposed.
Okay, all right, we will, since someone's here, we'll just move on to old business. Just so everyone's aware, the joint meeting of planning, zoning, EDC, inland wetlands is next Thursday. I'm just curious who's gonna go, and since it's the first time we're doing this, I'm kind of cautious about if there's going to be more than 2 people, because that constitutes a meeting on our behalf. So I'm just curious, just put feelers out who is actually going to go. I mean,
Tony, I intend to participate.
Okay. Is anybody else? Because if not, I was going to go myself.
I just have a question. Is it a Zoom meeting or? It's Zoom, okay.
Tony, we can certainly post it as a special meeting of planning and zoning with just a single item of coordination discussion.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if anybody, I don't want to tell anybody they can't go. I'm just trying to make sure I do this correctly, because again, we haven't done this before.
I'm fine not going. I have other meetings that evening already.
I wasn't planning on it, but it might be interesting. So I would say that we should post it.
Okay.
That way people can attend and discuss, and everybody's legal.
Okay. I mean, the joint meetings are on the town's website. They've been posted, but we'll post this as a planning and zoning meeting also, since there's going to be more than 2 of us there.
What time is it? Just out of curiosity?
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Okay, 7 p.m.
All right. We have next on the agenda is P&Z bylaws. John threw out 2 towns. I think it was Essex and what was the other town, John?
East Windsor.
East Windsor. I haven't had a chance to look at these. I don't know if anybody else has. what I think we should go through these in all of our free time and, see what we think, which one we're gonna kind of snag and go forward with, unless anybody else has read them all and has done all the legwork.
Were these sent out to us, Tony?
They're also in the Dropbox.
They're in
They
the,
send
yeah,
them.
they're,
These are in the Dropbox. I think it's worth discussing them. I know I had a cursory look at these. I did not go into these ones in depth, but I have looked at probably half a dozen others when we were looking at it under the Regulations Committee. But I think something that probably warrants some discussion is the approach that we're going to use, whether we're going to look to one of these as kind of the model that we edit to fit the bylaws for the commission, or are these presented as a starting point to establish an outline to build it from scratch. So I guess, John, I would just ask you the question, your recommendation, because I think you've been through this process before. And if you're presenting these two, are they presented as a starting point for us to adopt and then edit? Or is it for a starting point for information?
a little bit of both. We basically, Mike and I, Mike D'Amato, my colleague, and I both suggested one of the sets of bylaws from a town we work with. I work with Essex very closely. Mike works with East Windsor, and he has found the East Windsor ones to be very workable. As far as I am concerned, I just went through the process of, as you may know, Essex just merged their planning and their zoning commissions. So we went through a process of looking at the planning bylaws and the zoning bylaws, and throwing out what was inappropriate or out of date or redundant or internally contradictory. So there was a subcommittee that sort of merged and rebuilt these, and then they went through legal review with Attorney Royston. So I feel relatively confident that these are a pretty good set of bylaws, and my own take on it. I think you can take more of an open-ended approach and more of a prescriptive approach. And I tried very hard to eliminate over prescription, because I think it limits the flexibility that a commission ought to have in managing their meetings, and not create internal rules that could only really serve to trip you up. If someone wanted to point out, oh, well, your agenda didn't have, payment of bills before correspondence, and therefore this is an invalid meeting. Like, I don't like that approach. I like to, give the chair and the commission, the authority and the ability to kind of, adjust their agenda as needed for a regular meeting, as one example. And as another example, not to try to cite or repeat pages and pages of existing state statute or Freedom of Information Act, when it's easy enough to just say these, meetings shall be conducted per state statutes and per Freedom of Information. And so I've worked hard to strip some of that language out. So by a long way of saying, I think the Essex regs are a pretty good place to start. Mike would probably say the same for East Windsor. So I'll leave it at that.
So what would you like for us to come back to the next meeting with, having, if we all have the time, we've only had these for a day or two. If we've got the time to digest them, would you like us to come back with a recommendation of aspects that we like from them, or a selection of one to be the starting point?
Yeah, what I would perhaps recommend is maybe a small, limited duration ad hoc subcommittee of 2 or 3 of you to maybe meet via Zoom with Mike or I, and just go through and on behalf of the commission, kind of ask questions, talk through why, for instance, Essex did the things that they did, if that might apply to Deep River, if it should be eliminated, and come back with a recommendation to the full commission. I find it'll be a little bit more focused than just sort of having everyone take it home and come back with questions.
Yeah, I think, well, I'm thinking if we read through them and Essex or the other one nails kind of what we're after to begin with, maybe we'll be all right.
Mr. Chairman, can I suggest you solicit or select some participants to do this initial study that John suggests?
I'm not going to pick anybody because I have a feeling people are ready to volunteer for this. So go ahead. Anybody want to do this?
Chris is raising his hand.
I know. I figured Chris was all over this. Anybody besides Chris? That's it, huh? Chris, you're going to take the brunt of this, huh? Well,
Yeah, send me what I gotta read.
So I get
Tony, I'm happy to help if you need somebody to take a look at it in advance of the next meeting.
I think if everybody would at least glance it over, and maybe we'll go from there, because I have a feeling one of these is going to fit. And if we all get back here and it doesn't, then I think we should go, the extra route of going, hey, we should sit down and go through these individually. I think we'll be all right towards the next meeting, and I think we should make the decision then if somebody needs to sit down and go through these line by line. But if you guys don't mind doing a little homework, I'd appreciate it.
No, no.
Yeah.
And
They're-
you're
they're
saying
not long.
next
They're
meeting.
5 to 7 pages.
Yeah, no problem. And you're saying next meeting is in February, not the special meetings coming up.
Right. So is that all right with everyone, or yes, no, maybe so?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, John, I have one more question for you. From your experience, how long do you think it'll take us to kind of adopt and massage and have bylaws in place? Because it's been something that we've been wanting to do for quite some time. How can, with your help to expedite, what do you think it'll take?
I think you actually, the way bylaws need to be adopted is you cannot adopt it sort of the first time.
Mhm.
I think you need to sort of have a full set proposed and then can vote on them the next meeting. But so I would suggest if we keep this on the agenda and the commissioners are diligent about reading, I think we can come to a general consensus about direction next meeting. Perhaps in March, have a complete draft for adoption in April.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, if everybody's fine with that, moving on to reports. ZEO, top of the chain there, John.
Yes. So, I mean, we've gone through some of the activity that we've been involved with, keeping after the research on the Papusha property. There's been a number of meetings and conversations with abutters to a property on Bridge Street, and I'm trying to remember if it's East Bridge Street or West Bridge Street. About a potential, and this has been an issue that's come up over years and years, about a potentially illegal auto repair facility. And so we're continuing to do research on that. Issued a number of permits, which we'd be happy to share. I know, Tony, you have access to that file. And then continuing to work with First Selectman McDonald on the STEEP grant, which we are hoping we submitted all of the necessary contractual paperwork to the state and are hoping to get the go-ahead so that we can go out to RFP on a number of the town hall technology improvements. So I'm hoping to get that go-ahead in the next couple of weeks.
Fantastic.
And then also, I'll stick my neck out on this just to give you guys a heads up, is that Mike and I have also recently been hired to do zoning enforcement in Chester as well, where the building official, Dick Layton, also works, and have had preliminary conversations with Angus, and we'll have some conversations with First Selectman Gister in Chester about possibly extending town hall land use hours by having essentially a reciprocal arrangement to allow people to, drop off a Deep River permit during our Chester hours or vice versa, or ask a question to essentially, double the availability for zoning officials in each of those towns. But that's something that we're going to be talking to the selectmen about.
That's great.
Really good.
Right. All those extra hours we needed. All right, if that's all you got, John, I'm gonna move on to engineering, which I haven't seen anything. I don't, Nancy, you don't have anything, do you?
Sorry, what was that?
I was just engineering, if there's anything from,
Oh.
and I asked Nancy if she had anything, but I'm assuming nothing. We haven't had anything. large.
No, I have not seen anything.
Regs committee, I've got nothing at the moment that I can think of. John, I mean, I know we got some uses we have to add. All right, on to chairman. The only thing I was going to mention, well, there's a couple. The only thing, now I got a couple of things. The Connecticut land use, the thing that the lawyers do is March 6th from 9 to 4:30. You guys should have got the email from me. I'm pushing you guys. You can listen to it via Zoom this year. You don't have to go all the way up to Wesleyan. I think you should definitely, register for that. Listen in. Second thing, the RiverCog is working on their regional plan, and they have a mapping. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. So basically, I've sent you guys a link for this. They have a map that you can go on and put suggestions on about what you think belongs where in your town. So I'd like some input from you guys to jump in on that one.
Yeah, it's a collaborative mapping exercise where they're taking all people's input on places that are sort of important as destinations, as locations, potential trails or missing connections between communities, or areas of open space or of particular interest, to basically mark up a map like you would do at a charrette.
Also, I know this came up a little earlier. The selectmen do have the ordinance in front of them for the demolition delay. They've sent it to the attorney just to review it, and I believe the next selectmen's meeting, they're going to want a reason why we're asking for this. I mean, I'm going to go unless somebody else wants to volunteer their end for the chopping block. If not, I'm just going to go and say, look, I'll explain the reason that this has come up. We've had it in the regulations. If you guys are all right with it. And that's all I have as chairman. Budget. I think John has something to touch on.
Well, we did get, I don't know if you can bring that up. We did get a request from Angus and the finance folks about putting together a budget request for the upcoming fiscal year for 2021, 2022. They're looking to, have a minimal increase, 2% or 2.5% or less. But then there's also a capital improvements budget for any, larger scale asks that we might have. I think the STEEP grant that we got, which will upgrade computers, our GIS system, and our permitting approach, will cover a lot of those upgrades. But in talking with Tony and with Mike, to maybe set aside some money to do an assessment or an overall audit of the zoning regs to kind of look at more systemic tweaks and improvements we could make. Some additional money might be set aside for that, but wanted to bring that up to the commission.
Another thing that we might want to consider in terms of the budget is some money to be able to revisit the plan of conservation and development. We haven't done that comprehensively in probably close to 10 years. I know that there was an administrative adjustment to it, but I think that there's been sufficient significant change in Deep River since the last plan of conservation development which I'm sure the EDC wants to weigh in on. And we haven't really visited since we've established the village districts and the design advisory board and things like this. So I think that those are all items that we should be revisiting, and perhaps it's time to do a more comprehensive review of the plan. And so we should probably be looking at some resources to do so, because I don't think it's going to be done within the limited resources of the commission itself.
I agree. I'm just looking at the date on here, John. Are we in trouble? It says request should be submitted no later than January 7th.
Well, yeah.
I think we're, yeah,
I don't think we got this before our December meeting. I'm pretty sure we did not.
we didn't. All right, so I mean, if you guys are okay with them putting a budget forward for that and maybe throwing something in there for a look at the plan of conservation development. Anything else? All right.
Tony, with the I know we've solicited our own lawyers that are independent of the town's council now. Do we need to put that in our budget a line item, or is that going to remain in the town's budget for our legal services?
It remains in the town budget.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right. Payment of bills. Anybody have bills that they need? I haven't seen anything. Nancy?
I have not received anything.
That's what I like to hear. All righty. Commissioner training, again, it's just, I'm gonna back up for a second. I know Ken Slater said that they would be willing to come in and give us, they would Zoom in and give us training. I think we should definitely take them up on that. You know, I suggest putting together questions, have them do their demo. I don't know if we should have a special meeting for them at some point, or if we should do it on one of our meetings at a later, like, you know, put it towards the end or something. John, how do they normally do this?
Actually, Attorney Roberts is still listening in on the meeting.
Oh,
I don't know if you can pop in and answer that. I'll put him on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do it either way, either as part of your regular meeting if you had a light agenda, or a special meeting, you know, whatever works best. One of the other towns I represent basically sets aside, I think it's the first meeting in March, to have legal updates, and that's kind of an annual routine.
Oh, all right. So annually, all right, I like that. And we just run that by you ahead of time, just, you know, throw it on the agenda, and you guys would be available to answer questions, etc.
Yeah, I mean, and if you have specific questions, getting them to us ahead of time so that we can, you know, be prepared to answer them is good.
Fantastic. All right. Let's move on. All right, so that's it for the end of the regular meeting. We do have an executive session scheduled, so I'm going to ask everybody who's not a commission member, and Nancy, I'm going to ask you and John to stay. So everybody else is going to have to ask you to sign off, and if you don't, I'm going to attempt to kick you off if I can figure that out. Let's see. Did I miss anybody on here? Anybody who's not a member, or John or Nancy? All right. We stop recording and looking for a motion to go into executive session. Try and do this
I'd
right.
move to go into executive session.
All right, Alan, looking for a second.
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 Chris?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And Marion?
Yes.
30 seconds to stop recording somewhere on here. And yes, I want to